All right, Pitt fans, got your beer? Ready to hang out here on a Panther-Lair Post-Game on a Saturday afternoon? Your University of Pittsburgh football Panthers are 1-0 in the ACC. They're 4-1 overall after a 52-21 win at Georgia Tech. And when you sit down for a post-game show, this is the Panther-Lair Post-Game, of course. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. And when you sit down for a post-game show to talk about what you just saw, I mean, you want to sit down with like a big, hard-hitting point coming right off the bat. You want to just, boom, here's the big takeaway from this game. And here is the big takeaway from this game. Pitt just went on the road in the conference and won a game by 31 points. That's pretty good, it seems to me. And we could pick a lot of little things that we can find that were negative, and we can pick a lot of things that were positive. And certainly I think a lot of it breaks down on one side of the ball versus the other. But I think when we look at this overall, Pitt just went on the road in the conference and won a game by 31 points. A game that they were largely in control of start to finish. Even if there were times when Georgia Tech potentially could have taken some momentum. Could have built some momentum and not necessarily taken over the game, but had an opportunity to maybe put something together. Pitt stopped them every time. Georgia Tech's first touchdown. Wow, they're going to come back. What are they going to do? Well, I'm pretty sure Pitt scored a touchdown after that. Or no, Pitt actually kicked off, or Pitt punted after Georgia Tech's first touchdown. And on the next three drives, Georgia Tech went 3 and out. They get their next touchdown. They turn over on downs each of their next two drives. Pitt's defense steps up. They get another touchdown, and they follow it with a 3 and out. Georgia Tech was never able to put together any kind of momentum. They were never able to string together any drives, consecutive drives. They built a few good drives. They go 5 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown, 6 plays, 66 yards for a touchdown, 11 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. But each time, when they came back out on the field with an opportunity to build on their previous drive, they fell flat on their face, and Pitt's defense stepped up. Again, let me run through that drive chart again. Georgia Tech scores a touchdown. Their next 3 possessions, they go 3 and out. Georgia Tech scores another touchdown. Their next 2 possessions, they get stopped on 4th down, turnover on downs. And then they score their 3rd touchdown, and when they come back out late in the 3rd quarter with an opportunity again to try to score, because Georgia Tech scores that touchdown in the 3rd quarter, score is pretty much out of reach at that point, but their defense forces a 3 and out. And so they get the ball back. And Georgia Tech goes 3 and out themselves. Never able to string anything together. Pitt's defense, we're going to talk a lot about Pitt's defense today. And we're going to talk a lot about Pitt's defense over the course of the next 2 weeks since Pitt is off this week. But when it came down to it, they made just enough plays. They did just enough, aided in part by bad plays and bad coaching and bad decisions by Georgia Tech, but they made just enough plays to keep Georgia Tech in check. And they gave up 3 touchdowns. It was not a bad day at the office. The yardage? Yeah, the yardage looks bad. Jeff Sims throws for 342 yards. Georgia Tech finishes with 415. They only rush for 73, which is solid. But Pitt, forces Georgia Tech to go 2 of 11 on 3rd down, 1 of 4 on 4th down. And, of course, the 2 interceptions on the first 2 plays of the game. The first 2 drives of the game. Pitt gets 2 sacks, which were both huge. Ended up being a pretty good day at the office. And we haven't even mentioned the name of one Kenneth Shane Pickett. 389 yards, 4 touchdowns. He runs for a net gain of about 21 yards, but he still ran for he had some key scrambles. He had some runs that just kept the play alive so he could make a pass downfield. The throw to Lucas Krull, not even the touchdown. The touchdown was a great play. The play before it was a great play. That 2-play drive, both passes to Lucas Krull were both great plays by Kenny Pickett. And a nice bounce back by Lucas Krull, who dropped the first down earlier in the game. You can find things to pick apart here. You can find negatives to cite. You can find criticisms to lob. But again, they just went on the road against a conference team, a conference opponent, who had some momentum coming off a pretty big win of its own last week. And they beat them by 31. I'd say it's a good day at the office. I'd say it's a good afternoon for Pitt and a heck of a way to go into the off week before they go to Virginia Tech in 2 weeks. So I'm having a beer, the Aurochs Pumpkin Ale, getting into the spirit of the fall. I hope you're having a Cold one as well as we sit here on the Panther-Lair Post-Game after Pitt's game at Georgia Tech. Of course, you know the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com. You can check out the message boards where you can interact with hundreds of thousands of other Pitt fans. The game thread right now, I mean, let me just check this thing while we're looking. We have our live game thread that goes throughout the game. 700 posts, 9,000 views, 18 pages of posts being put up during the game. This is people talking about the game while it's happening. It's the best place to be. If it's a road game, I mean, this is where you want to hang out. You know, you're watching the game at home on TV, you hang out on the message boards and interact with other Pitt fans at Panther-Lair.com. Quick shout out, of course, to Home Field. We've got the Warm Up the Victory Lights shirt on tonight. HomefieldApparel.com has a great collection of Pitt gear that you can check out. Super soft, super comfortable shirts, some of the highest quality shirts that you're going to find, and then a great, just great logos and designs. I mean, it's just, they do it, they hit both sides of it really well, of making shirts that look really cool and shirts that are also really comfortable and really high quality. And plus, if you go to Home Field Apparel right now, you go to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R, and you're going to get 15% off your order. So you can't beat that. You get really high quality gear and you get it at a discount. I mean, what's the downside in that? So we got a lot to talk about here on the Panther-Lair Post-Game. We'll hang out for an hour or so and talk about things. And, of course, you here on the live stream can jump in the chat. And this is what we do. It's almost like a post-game call-in show, except you're not calling me. You're going to post your comments in the chat, and we will we'll read your comments and questions, and we'll kind of have a conversation about the game. And if you want to make sure your comments and questions get read and answered, you could be a super chatter. You hit that little $sign button at the bottom, throw a couple bucks to the podcast, support us. We really appreciate it, and we'll make sure we get to your comments and questions. So like Michael B., one of our regular super chatters, he always shows up for us, and we appreciate it big time. He jumps in right off the bat as a super chatter, says, Chris, what a win, huh? I don't think many people expected this kind of domination, but I'll take it. I think with the kind of offense Pitt has, we will be in every game we play. One downer, though, SJF should be riding the bench. I assume you mean Shockey Jacques Louis. All right, so a few things in there. First comment that Michael makes is, I don't think many people expected this kind of domination, but I'll take it. Here's the thing with Pitt. So as we ended September, they come off that win over New Hampshire, 77-7. And you've got 4 games in a row of really effective offensive play. Offense looking really good. I mean, week after week. They came into this game today averaging, 52 points per game? And a lot of that's going to come from, when you score 77 against New Hampshire. But the offense was playing at a really high level, and they were producing a lot of points. But there was always sort of a question of how sustainable is it? And this was even a joke that was made. I saw these jokes being made on Twitter during the game today. A question of how sustainable is this offensive success? How sustainable is Kenny Pickett's current performance? I mean, can Pitt keep it up week after week after week? Can you do this, or is the offense eventually going to fall off? And it's a question I considered myself. How much was the level of competition? When are teams going to catch up? When is Kenny Pickett going to have an off day? When is a drop pass going to happen at the worst time? A false start going to happen at the worst time? And then this offense is going to not be able to score 40, 50 points a game, and the team is going to struggle. When is that fall-off point going to happen? And I don't want to sit here and say that I'm convinced that the fall-off point will never happen. I think that they're bound to have a down game. Even that 2016 Pitt team, with that offense they had a down game. You can go back to, I think it was the Miami game. They only scored like 28 points, and they got 7 off a kick return for a touchdown. So they only scored 3 touchdowns in that game offensively. And that's... it's sort of inevitable. Either you'll run into a stiffer competition or you'll just have an off week. This offense has not had an off week. They had some stretches in the Western Michigan game where they could have scored another touchdown or 2, and they failed to do so. But they have not had, on the whole, an off week. There hasn't been a bad game for this offense yet. The running game has left some things to be desired, but we're going to talk about that because if today's game was any indication, there's going to be some opportunities for this running game to take off. Now, some of that's dependent on the defense, or the defense they're facing. But this offense has not had an off week yet, and they come into this game, and they're going on the road against a conference opponent, a team that just sacked, presumably the best offense in the best quarterback in the ACC, sacked him 8 times, and largely held North Carolina's offense in check, and that's one of the better offenses in the conference. Well, Georgia Tech wasn't able to do that against this offense. This offense, Pitt's offense, scored 52 points, put up 580 yards of total offense, threw for 399 yards, rushed for 181, with the running backs combining for, 34 carries for 158 yards. This offense continues to hum right along. And I think there's some scheme things happening. I think Mark Whipple does know offense as much as people have wanted to bash him over the last few years, and I understand why when you look at the production and how bad the offense has been, how unproductive it's been. But I mean, I think the man, he knows how to scheme up, particularly a passing game. And I think you're seeing it happen now with talented players, with quarterback who's just really seeing the field well. And you've got receivers who are making plays and getting open, and tight ends who are making plays and getting open. And I'm using plural there because Gavin Bartholomew, he finished officially with 2 catches for 22 yards. But he looks he looks legit, Gavin Bartholomew. I mean, he looks like a guy who, if for some reason you didn't have Lucas Krull available, I think you'd feel good about Bartholomew being in there and playing. And even with Krull being available, I think you feel good about Bartholomew being in there and playing. Those guys combined today for 4 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown. That's a pretty good stat line to come out of your tight ends when you've got receivers like Jordan Addison on the field and Taysier Mack on the field. Jalen Barden had a nice catch. Jalen Bradley makes a nice catch there right near the end. But you've got talent at these positions. They're working in a scheme that I think is designed to get them open and have success in the passing game. And those guys are executing and playing at a really high level. I'll tell you one thing about Kenny Pickett, and it was mentioned a few times on the broadcast, and I really noticed it today. And I think it stood out to me because it's one of the criticisms I've had of Kenny Pickett in recent years. That, particularly last year and 2019, I felt like, and it probably happened in 2018 as well, and I just sort of excused it because he was a first-year starter at quarterback. But I felt like his sort of feel for the pressure wasn't great. He would sometimes scramble or pull the ball down and start moving around and get happy feet, even when the pressure wasn't really there yet, when the pocket hadn't really collapsed. It was like he had a little more time to hang in there. Now, he's getting a lot of time. He had a lot of time today. There were times where Georgia Tech was able to pressure him a little bit, and he scrambled, and he made him pay for it by keeping his eyes downfield and making the play. But on the whole, he's had pretty good protection all season, and I think some of that is due to the play up front, and some of that is due to how he's reacting to it. When the protection is there, he's really hanging in the pocket well, better than I think he even did in recent years when the protection was there. I think his poise, his pocket presence, which, and you can go back and listen to old Panther-Lair shows from last year, the year before, this offseason, last offseason, heading into 2020, heading into this season, where I talked about pocket presence. And I felt like that was an area where Pickett needed to improve maybe the most. As much as we talk about downfield accuracy and arms putting up the numbers, 389 and 4 touchdowns today. I haven't done the math on what that puts him at for the season, but I think it's a whole hell of a lot. 19 touchdown passes through 5 games. I'll drink to that. So you've got Pickett playing at a really high level, and that's the key. That's the first key, and we've talked about it so many times. I mean, it's the cliche of football, and it's the truest cliche maybe in all of sports, that having a great quarterback or even a very good quarterback goes so far in your team's success and has such an impact on your team's potential for success. And Pickett's showing it right now because he is playing. He really was, this entire game today, unstoppable. I mean, he was unstoppable. And you can point to the second half. Oh, they only scored 10 points in the second half. They only had 4 possessions in the second half. They only had 4 possessions in the second half. And in the second half, on those 4 possessions, they went touchdown, 3 and out, field goal, which that's unfortunate that they had to settle for a field goal. They had a holding penalty and some weird personnel stuff on the offensive line. You don't like to settle for a field goal, but at that point in the game, they're leading by 4 touchdowns, and they took almost 5 minutes off the clock. So even though it's too bad that they got 3 points instead of 7, I would say they still largely accomplished their goals. And then the 4th drive, they didn't score a touchdown, but they drove 76 yards and took 8 minutes. They ran out the clock. They took the ball at their own 23 with 8 minutes and 3 seconds on the clock and finished that drive with a kneel down to run out the final seconds of the game. That drive didn't get a touchdown, but that drive was absolutely successful. So when we look at it and say, well, you got to look at, I know our guy, RJ Seaman 38, I don't know if he's on here yet, but he always talks about, look at the second half scoring. They only had 10 points in this second half. But I would be hard pressed to say that they were not successful on offense in the second half. When they have, 2 drives that are scoring drives where they take almost 5 minutes off the clock each time, and then they have an 8-minute drive to run out the clock. I would say that's a very successful offense. Just maybe not as explosive in terms of the number of points scored as they were in the first half, but a really successful offense. And you know what? Before I'm going to get to more comments and questions here. On that final drive, they go 11 plays for 76 yards. They take 8 minutes and 3 seconds off the clock. 10 of those plays for 66 yards were all running plays. They had the one pass, the Nick Patty pass to Jaden Bradley, right? And I think that was to convert a 3rd down. And it was to convert a 3rd and 9, and it was a 10-yard pass. So they go 10 plays for 66 yards on an 11-play, 76 drive. 10 of those plays for 66 of those yards were all running plays. And we've talked so much about this running game. They can't run it when they need to. They've run it when they needed to twice now. At the end of the Tennessee game, they were able to run the ball and run out the clock. And then here at the end of this game, they were able to run the ball and run out the clock. And I know so I'm going to get to the comments and questions, but real quick, because I think you guys probably feel the same way. The running game was there to be had today. If Kenny Pickett wasn't just dropping dimes all over the place and pretty much unstoppable through the air, Pitt could have won this game on the ground as well. And it might not have been 52-21. It might have ended up, 31-14. And maybe not quite as many points and not quite as many short drives, because Pitt's touchdown drives in the first half, 2 minutes and 14 seconds, 33 seconds, 15 seconds, 3:08. Jeez, they were really slacking on that one. 39 seconds. They were scoring so quickly. You might not have had as many points, but I absolutely believe that they would have been able to win this game on the ground. When you look at the times when Vincent Davis, Izzy Abanikanda, and Rodney Hammond got opportunities, they were running, and they had room to run, and they had holes to get through, and then those guys were making plays, and they had a few of their runs when they actually did get the ball that they were one guy away, one shoestring tackle, one leg tackle away from turning 4 or 5 yards into 15 or 20. I was encouraged by the running game today. Some of that is the defense they were facing, that 3-3-5 defense that Georgia Tech uses, I think is geared more towards stopping the pass than the run. And so they were able to, I think there were opportunities to take advantage of that. But this was a game I think they could have won with the running game if they needed to. If the passing game wasn't clicking like it was, I think they could have won it with the run. As it stands, Izzy Abanikanda finishes the leading rusher, 60 yards on 15 carries. Vincent Davis goes 13 for 50, and Rodney Hammond goes 6 for 48. Pretty much all on that final drive. When you talk about 10 plays for 66 yards, Hammond had, I think, 5 for 43 on that final drive. So it's hard to find much to complain about there. But it was an encouraging game for the running game. They'll have to... they've got a lot to work on there, of course. Some more super chatters jumping in. Want to see what else we got. Tito Panther says, Chris, will you get wasted today or tonight? Man, I feel like I'm too old to get wasted. I'm at that age where, and it's sad, but if I drink 3 IPAs in a night, I wake up in the morning feeling like I did when I was 22 and, had a keg of Pabst or something like that. It's just, I can't. I can't get wasted anymore because I feel like I'm too old for it. Let's see. Joe New says, glad for the win. He's a super chatter, and we appreciate it. Joe New says, glad for the win. We are now 4-1 against 5 very crappy teams. Records aside, my eyes don't lie. Western Michigan still hurts. That's great. I'm glad that you were very positive after this game. You know what, though? They just beat a team by 30 who last week beat North Carolina. So if you want to use the transitive property, then Pitt should be set against Carolina. So that's another game that you can look at down the road. And let me think. Carolina beat Duke, so that's another one you can probably check off. Carolina beat Virginia, right? So that's going to be another one that you can probably check off. So they might have beat 5 very crappy teams. I don't entirely agree with you about that. Western Michigan keeps winning, but their MAC team, nonetheless. You might be right that they beat 5 very crappy teams, but check this out. Look at the rest of the schedule. They have 7 games left, and there aren't a lot of world beaters out there. Just like we talked about all last week heading into this game, when we talked about how the ACC looks wide open and the Coastal looks wide open, and there's an opportunity out there. It's an opportunity to step up and maybe win the Coastal championship again, and this opportunity's out there for all these teams. Well, that's still very much the case. And what we saw today was Pitt going against one of those teams that potentially was probably looking at the rest of the Coastal and looking at the ACC and saying, wow, it's open. A lot of opportunities to win it. Georgia Tech was probably looking at it the same way after their win over North Carolina. They were probably looking at the ACC and saying, wow, we got a lot of chances here. There's a real opportunity to win this thing. Well, Pitt just beat them. And Georgia Tech now has 2 conference losses, I want to say. And so Pitt, since Georgia Tech has 2 conference losses and Pitt beat Georgia Tech, they're effectively 3 games ahead of Georgia Tech right now. So you want to create separation with each of these teams in the Coastal. You faced one of them, you beat them by 30, and you're now 3 games ahead of them. They might have only beaten 5, they might have only played 5 crappy teams so far. You might be right about that, but I don't see a lot of teams that are all that great on the rest of the schedule. The opportunity is here. This offense keeps humming along and the defense cleans some things up. The opportunity is here to have some success. Scott Eisenberg says, anyone know what happened with Owen Drexel at the end there? I don't know what the injury was, and I haven't seen Pat Narduzzi's post-game press conference yet about it. I don't know why you're not kneeling in that situation. Drexel got hurt on the play where Rodney Hammond ran for 18 yards to the 1-yard line. I think there was about 30 seconds left in the game there. You could have taken a knee. You didn't need to hand the ball off. It didn't need to be any kind of snap that would have needed to cause any kind of engagement between the offensive line and the defensive line. You could have just taken a knee on that snap and then taken another knee, and the game would be over. Instead, they hand it off. Rodney Hammond gets 18 yards. That's cool. He almost had a touchdown, so you almost scored 59 in this game. But Owen Drexel, your starting center, got hurt. And this is a week after he missed the New Hampshire game with an injury. Now, he's got an extra week to rest up, I suppose, since they don't have a game this coming weekend. But I'm not really sure why you handed that ball off. I'm not really sure why you ran a play there. Georgia Tech, I think, they might have still had 3 timeouts by that point. But it really doesn't matter because you're up by 30 with less than a minute to go. 30 seconds left, you could just take a knee. Which they ultimately did at the 1-yard line. Instead of punching it in for that final touchdown, after running the ball to the 1, they take a knee at that point. But by then, Drexel was already, out hurt. I don't know what his injury was, but it doesn't seem very it doesn't seem like it was a good idea to run that play. David Allen says, big win. To me, it looks like a successful season is on the way, and it keeps Pat Narduzzi off the hot seat. Every week is going to be an adventure, David. I think, there were just enough things that you saw from this defense today and then they make you still a little suspect of how far the defense has come or where they're at. I think they still have a lot of things to clean up. There were too many missed tackles today. We'll see what the numbers were from Pro Football Focus. We'll look at that, during the week. We'll write about it on Panther-Lair.com, but there were missed tackles. that led to a lot of yards after the catch and yards after contact. There were receivers running open. I mean, the 2 interceptions were both RPO plays that, would have gone for some pretty big gains if they weren't deflected. Now, I mean, they were deflected, so that's part of it. And, if your defensive game plan is to just try and deflect every pass that gets thrown on an RPO, then, hey, I hope it works for you. I don't know if that's a good plan and something you can rely on week to week. I'll tell you what's missing from this team and from this defense in particular. And we'll see what the numbers end up looking like, but they're not getting pressure from the front four, not enough pressure from the front four, not consistent pressure from the front four. I think Pitt ended up with 2 sacks, official quarterback hurries. They credited Pitt with 3, but that's a weird stat. We'll see what Pro Football Focus says as far as the pressure stats. I tend to trust their numbers a little bit more than the official quarterback hurry box score stats. But the front four is just not getting enough pressure. And I think that's, they're giving the quarterback too much time. And I like the players in this secondary. I think Damari Mathis is a really good corner. I think Marquez Williams has played well. He wasn't really tested at all today. I feel like he hasn't been tested much at all this season, which I suppose could be a testament to his play. I think the safeties have some question marks that we need to find out about. You need to find out if, who your best options are there. If it's Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill, if Rashad Battle's part of that mix, if Buddy Mack, whoever it is. And I'm not sure they're going to find an option at either of those spots that really locks it down or is really an impact player at those positions, but they need to stop making mistakes. You know what I mean? Whether it's missed tackles or blown coverages, letting guys run free. And that's not just on the safeties. We've talked about this with the way Pitt's defense plays and the scheme. I mean, some of those guys who end up running free at the safeties it's due to the linebackers. The linebackers have more responsibilities there than maybe you can tell. But there are things they still have to clean up. And, part of it is getting more pressure from the front four. And I think that's leaving some of the secondary guys out to dry a little bit when you're not getting pressure on the quarterback. You're letting him pick your secondary apart a little bit more than you would like. So that's something that's got to improve between now and the Virginia Tech game and the final, 7 games of this season, is you've got to be able to get more pressure on the quarterback. So I think that's been an issue. It's going to be, I suspect an issue for a while. If you want to live on the edge and just rely on either giving up touchdowns, or deep completed passes or getting interceptions, I guess you can try to do that. It sort of felt like Pitt's defense did that a little bit today. And they were helped by Georgia Tech too. Georgia Tech, I don't understand when you've got Jeff Sims. What did he finish? 23 of 32 for 342 and 2 touchdowns, along with the 2 interceptions. I don't know why you run the ball 31 times. And not all of those were handoffs. Some of them were quarterback scrambles. There were 2 sacks in there. I don't know why you hand the ball off, though. I mean, you had plays that could be made, and opportunities to take advantage of against Pitt's pass defense. And it does remain an issue. I don't think there's any question about that. We'll just have to see what they're able to clean up between now and that Virginia Tech game. I think Georgia Tech could have done more with the RPOs because they had guys open. It just, some of those passes got deflected and turned into interceptions. But I don't think that was an indictment on the game, the play call or the play design or anything like that. It was just executed just a little bit off from what it needed to be. I don't know why you go away from it, though. I think Georgia Tech could have given themselves a better chance if they hadn't, insisted on trying to hand it off. And some of their, 3rd and 4th down plays, I think the last time they turned it over on downs, they handed it off on 3rd and 4 and got 3 yards, and then they handed it off on 4th and 1 and got, lost 2 yards. I don't know why you're not throwing on both of those plays. The play before that, it was 2nd and 10, and they threw a screen pass that picked up 6 yards. I mean, that was your best bet. If I'm an opponent, I'm probably not trying to run all that much against Pitt. Their run defense hasn't been as good as it's been in the past this year, but I'm going to make Pitt's defense shut down my passing game before I'm going to try and really lean on the running game too much. I mean, if I'm Pitt, if I'm Virginia Tech, if I'm Clemson, I'm North Carolina, Miami, whoever it is, I'm coming out and I'm throwing all over the place until you show that you can actually like either A, get to the quarterback, or B, cover. And I think if Pitt is going to have any chance, they're going to have to do better at the former and get to the quarterback and disrupt the quarterback's timing and make it uncomfortable in the pocket. But I was surprised that Georgia Tech didn't throw more. They ended up with 32 pass attempts. I'm surprised they didn't throw more than that, to be honest. Let's see here. David Allen says, biggest negative is the noon start kept me from attending. I've been at every Pitt game at Georgia Tech since ACC play. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Noon starts are kind of part of it. We'll see what this Virginia Tech game ends up being. But noon starts, you just kind of got used to it. I mean, I got to be honest. I'm sort of partial to them because it sort of frees up the rest of the day. You know what I mean? We can get a noon start, get done with work around 6 or so, and you got the whole night. You get 3:30 start, you're working until midnight or so. So I'd rather have the noon start. Luca Carroll says, remember when we all hated Mark Whipple? LOL. Yeah, it was funny. I think there's still probably a lot of detractors because Pitt's offense definitely struggled a lot in 2019 and 2020, and they've had 5 really good games so far throwing the ball, but running the ball remains an issue. But I have to think that people feel pretty good when you hang 52 on a conference opponent on the road, right? John D says, Hammond clearly looks the part, as does Izzy. Is Davis still in there purely for pass blocking? Because through 5 games, he's been ineffective at best. I thought Vincent Davis was okay today. I thought he had opportunities. At times it looked like he was going to pick up a bit of where he left off last year at Georgia Tech. I'm still with you. I think Abanikanda is, personally, I think he's the best back on the team. That's just sort of my... I've hitched up to this boat, and I'm just not going to let it go. I'm just going to keep riding that one because that's where I've been for a long time. But otherwise, I do think he's the best back on the team. I lost my train of thought there for a second, but I think he's got the size. I think he's got the speed. I saw some runs today where he showed some patience and then got outside, allowed the holes to develop or allowed the blocking to engage and then got outside and made things happen. I think he's a good pass catching back. And I like Hammond a lot too. I think Hammond can do a lot of those things as well. I think there's some Dion Lewis comparisons to be made there. And that's, you could do worse in terms of guys that you're getting compared to. So I'm with you. I lean toward Hammond and Abanikanda. I think they're the best backs on the team, and I would give Izzy even more work than he's getting. But I think there's times and places for Vincent Davis to be mixed in as well. Those are clearly your top 3. Even though Daniel Carter got a touchdown today on a pass play, but those are clearly your top 3. You figure out who you want to use. Figure out who you want to use. Nathaniel Rumrill says, is that game enough for Kenny and Addison to get ACC Players of the Week finally? Yeah, it was funny. Jordan Addison caught 3 touchdowns in 2 consecutive games and couldn't get ACC Player of the Week, I guess because one of those games was a loss and the other was against an FCS opponent. Kenny Pickett threw for 11 touchdowns over the course of 2 games. Same thing. One game was a loss and the other was an FCS opponent. Now you've got an ACC game on the road. Pickett goes 23 of 36 for 389 and 4 touchdowns. Addison catches 6 for 117 and a touchdown. I'm inclined to say it, but here's something funny. Jordan Addison, 6 catches for $117 and a touchdown. Taysier Mack, 5 catches for 121 and a touchdown. What if Taysier Mack gets an ACC Receiver of the Week before Jordan Addison? By the numbers, he had the better game. 5 catches for $121 and a score. By the numbers, he had the better game. 5 catches on 7 targets as opposed to Addison catching 6 on 9 targets with 3, they call him 3 drops here in the official box score. I don't know if they were all drops, but he had a drop. It would be funny, though, if Jordan Addison catches, 6 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns in back-to-back games and doesn't get it. And then the next week, Taysier Mack does get it before Addison ever gets one. Either way, I mean, you don't need conference awards to know that Jordan Addison's, if he's not the best receiver, if he's not the top receiver in the ACC, he's not any worse than 2 or 3. He's really high up there. And Taysier Mack, I like it when he sort of reminds everyone that he can make things happen too. And that was without getting a whole lot from Jalen Barden. Shockey Jacques-Louis had 1 catch for 21 yards. The tight ends, like I said, had 4 catches. I mean, those guys definitely had their contributions as well. Let's see here. Scott Eisenberg says, I hope the defense just practices tackling for 2 straight weeks, especially the defensive backs in space. Yeah, I mean, the defensive backs need to get better at tackling. The linebackers had some issues, although I'll give credit to John Patrician. John Patrician, I feel like, had a big game against UMass, and then I don't want to say he disappeared, but he wasn't as good against Tennessee and Western Michigan as he had been against UMass. Today, 5 tackles, 2 solo stops, 1.5 tackles for loss, and 1 interception. And I thought his 2 solo tackles were big tackles. I think he did a great job lining them up and making a key stop, making the kind of tackles that other guys had missed earlier in the game. And we'll see how the missed tackle stats kind of pan out. But I was impressed with. I was impressed with Patrician, and I thought they rotated the linebackers a lot too. It seemed like I saw a lot of different combinations. I mean, I think you started with Cam Bright and Servassier Dennis and Phil Campbell, but then Patrician was rotated in with that group, and then Wendell Davis was rotated in with that group, and Chase Pine came out with that group. I'm not sure if Brandon George got a lot of play today. He finished with 3 tackles. We'll have to see if those were on defense or special teams. I'm not sure how much he worked in with the linebackers after playing pretty well against New Hampshire last week at middle linebacker. But overall, I mean, there's a lot that has to be cleaned up with that defense, particularly in regards to missed tackles. They've got to clean it up because it's going to cost them, and it cost them today. It cost them today. Hail to Pitt says it was a very good game for Pitt. Pitt's offense has too many weapons to cover. Pitt's front 7 was much better today. Only negative is the secondary letting up big plays still. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a group effort. I mean, I think the defensive backs definitely have to wear that, but I think your linebackers and defensive line aren't getting enough pressure. They're not getting enough pressure on the quarterback. And so it's a lot easier to go at the secondary and find holes in the secondary when you've got time to stand back there and make the plays. David Maschio says, Clemson and Penn State, but I think this was Pitt's best all-around game for a Pat Narduzzi team. There was a Duke game in 2016, the week after the Clemson game. Pitt won 56-14. Excuse me. In terms of a dominant ACC opponent, an ACC win, I mean, that was about as complete as it gets. This game, they still gave up a ton of passing yards to Jeff Sims. They got the 2 interceptions on the first 2 plays of the game, which ultimately meant a whole lot in this game. You know what I mean? Loomed pretty large and were pretty significant. The Virginia Tech game in 2018, they win 52-22. They run for 500 yards or something like that. It was a pretty dominant, impressive game. Last year's Virginia Tech game, they win by 33. I was looking at the biggest, scoring differences in a Pitt ACC game under Pat Narduzzi. That 2016 game against Duke was the biggest one, 56-14. It was a 42-point win. 2020's Virginia Tech game last year, they won 47-14, so you got a 33-point win. That was the second biggest conference win for Narduzzi. And then you have this game today, 31-point win, 52-21. And then the fourth biggest was against Virginia Tech in 2018, the 52-22 game, which was at home. Pat Narduzzi has had 4 wins over ACC opponents by 30-plus points. This was the first one. This game today was the first one that happened on the road. So the old dog's still capable of new tricks, I guess, would be one way to say it. Homer Simpson says, now I can forget the Western Michigan game. I don't think you need to forget the Western Michigan game. I don't think you need to pretend like that didn't happen. I don't think you need to ignore it. That's always going to be in the loss column. And if it ends up being the only loss, if it ends up being one of 5 losses, whatever it is, it's always going to be in the loss column. And whatever this season ends up being, you'll always be able to say, well, what might have been if they hadn't lost to Western Michigan? And you can stretch the ceiling as far as you want. You can stretch the, yeah. You could say, well, oh, they went 11-1. They could have been 12-0. Or you could say, oh, they went 6-6. They could have been 7-5. Either way, that win is always going to be there. But like somebody was tweeting me today. They're like, oh, look at the Western Michigan score. I don't care about the Western Michigan score. I don't care about Western Michigan at all. That's always going to be part of Pitt's record this year. But now that they're in conference play, the only thing that matters is conference play. I don't even care what Tennessee did. Sure, if Pitt gets into the polls, if Pitt ends up ranked at some point, and who knows, maybe when you beat a conference team by 30 on the road and you're 4-1, maybe that's enough to get you into the polls this week. I don't know if it is or not. I kind of don't care about that either because I feel like it'll take care of itself. But maybe once you get into the polls, having a win at Tennessee will boost your resume or something like that. I don't know. But I also don't care. I don't care what Tennessee does, and I don't care what Western Michigan does the rest of the way. Just like I don't care what UMass does, and I don't care what New Hampshire does. It's interesting. It's a curiosity. Oh, look, that team's doing that, or that team's doing that. The Tennessee quarterback situation will be funny to follow. But ultimately, all that matters is these 8 conference games, and more specifically the next 7, and what the other teams in the Coastal do, and what the other teams in the rest of the ACC do. You really at this point, and I know it was coach speak in the aftermath of the Western Michigan game that Kenny Pickett said it on the Kenny Pickett show. Pat Narduzzi said it. All the goals are still in front of us. We still want to win the Coastal and blah blah blah. And it was coach speak at that point, and I understand, even though it was accurate. But right now, really the only thing that matters is that sort of immediate goal of winning the Coastal Division. And once you accomplish that, if you accomplish that, then you move on to the next goal of trying to win the ACC. You know what I mean? You really kind of focus on the goals that are ahead of you. And the goal right now, the only thing that matters right now is establishing yourself in the Coastal. And since you've got 8 games in a row here, 6 of them against Coastal teams, you find out every week where you measure up. You find every week is a measuring stick because it's against another conference team, and 6 out of the 8 are against another, Coastal team. And you just faced your first conference team, your first Coastal team, and you won by 31 on the road. So, to hell with Western Michigan, to hell with Tennessee, UMass, New Hampshire, whatever. What matters right now is how Pitt stacks up in this Coastal Division. And the way they stack up is they're 3 games better than Georgia Tech and 30 points better than the Yellow Jackets. And I know on the TV broadcast they were talking a lot about, I think Pitt has to be the Coastal favorite right now. Pitt has to be the Coastal favorite. I don't know about all that. It's 1 game. Some of these teams have played 2 games, 3 games. We know a little bit about this team. We know about that team. We know that Virginia and North Carolina have issues defensively. We know that Duke doesn't look like they really have elevated themselves all that much, even though they beat Kansas and Northwestern. We know that Miami looks like they are a dumpster fire right now. We know that Georgia Tech just lost to Pitt, and so they're way behind the Panthers. We have an idea about some of these teams, but there are a lot of games left to be played. I can sit here and look at it and say, Pitt just won a conference game on the road by 30, and the rest of this division looks like I don't want to say it looks like garbage, but I mean, they all look like they have big issues. And Pitt's got issues too. But they've also got an offense that could score a bajillion points. And that gives you some confidence about how they'll do. That's the goal right now, though. That's the only thing that matters. And you can dwell on the Western Michigan game, and maybe Pitt will achieve it. They'll succeed at such a high level that Western Michigan game really will be like darn it. Think about how far they could have gotten if they hadn't lost that game. Think about what they might have done. But I mean, deal with that when you get to that point. For now, the focus is on this very singular, direct goal that has a very clear and direct path. And that goal is winning this division and getting yourself back to Charlotte for another chance at another shot at the ACC championship game. And who knows who you'll be playing down there? Who's up for a Pitt Wake Forest ACC championship game, huh? Who wants it? There's a lot of games between now and then, though. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Pitt's got 7 more conference games to play that'll find out what's going on. David Maschio says, plus Sam Scarton with a nice field goal. Yeah, let me, I don't want to get the yardage wrong on this. 46 yards for Sam Scarton on the field goal. Didn't ultimately matter in the score. I don't think it mattered in terms of covering or anything like that because the line was, 3.5 or something? And by the way, and speaking of gambling, listen, Pitt, the over in Pitt games is the surest thing in college football this season. It's hit every game this season. It's hit a bunch of games at the end of last season. The over is the bet. We never recommend betting on Pitt games for or against Pitt because who the heck can figure out what's going on? But the over is a reliable shot here. I think week after week, you can feel comfortable betting the over. And that's partially because Pitt's offense looks incredible and they're never going to stop scoring. And it's also because they're prone to giving up some points too. Hammer the over. But yeah, Sam Scarton's field goal doesn't matter in terms of the outcome of the game, doesn't matter in terms of covering the spread. But in terms of, I think, instilling a little bit of confidence in the kicking game and the special teams, I think it was pretty big. To get a 46-yard field goal from the first-year kicker. Guy, I think he's a redshirt freshman, but he's seeing action for the first time. That's pretty good. Pretty good way. All right, let's see here. Homer Simpson says it felt really good because Georgia Tech's been talking a lot of crap, had to give them a dose of their own medicine on the live stream. Well, Georgia Tech, I think, was pretty, Georgia Tech, at least their fans, and probably the team were feeling pretty good about themselves. They just beat Carolina. In a big win. That was a big win for them. And so they came into this game with some momentum. Pitt came into this game fresh off an FCS win, but still kind of carrying, and I think the fans would agree with this, still kind of carrying some baggage from the loss to Western Michigan. And again, they didn't totally erase all that baggage, but this was good for what ailed them. Scott Eisenberg says the O-line's pass blocking might be the best it's been in a long while. Yeah, I think they're playing really, really well. Yeah, I think the line is blocking really well. I think they've I don't want to say they've got it all figured out, but they're giving Kenny Pickett all the time he needs on most of his dropbacks. David Allen says, would Pitt be in the top 20 if they hadn't lost to Western Michigan? I think so. I would say if they came out of September 4-0, averaging 50 points a game, I would think they would have been in the top 25 entering this week. And then you go down to Georgia Tech and beat them by 30. I would think they'd climb into the top 20. Depending on other outcomes, you always have to, teams move around. It's not just you moving up, it's other teams moving down. But I would think they would be in the top 20. And like I said, I'll be interested to see what kind of votes they get. They just beat a conference team on the road by 30. With an offense that looks pretty unstoppable. Yeah, we'll be interested to see. Sean Conley says Kenny is the real deal, playing his way into a late first day, early second day pick. This year's offense is strong, and when you take one player away, there's someone else open. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that has really stood out, right? So Jordan Addison is the guy. And Georgia Tech knew Jordan Addison was the guy, and they still couldn't stop him. And then when they finally might have felt like they had Jordan Addison stopped, Taysier Mack goes for even more, makes even bigger plays. Not necessarily bigger plays, but he goes for more than Addison, 5 for 121 and a touchdown. I said this on Twitter during the game. I'm really at a point right now, and I don't expect this to last all season, but I'm at a point right now where when Kenny Pickett drops back to pass, and he's got time, and he throws a deep pass. There was a long time, and this is the case in most football, that a guy drops back, throws a deep pass. It's going to be a 50-50 ball at best, probably covered. You throw something that deep, and defense has time to recover and get over there and try and break up the pass and all this stuff. Right now, I'm at a point where when Kenny Pickett drops back to pass, and he throws deep, I better than 50% expect that ball to be caught. I really do, particularly if the target is Addison. But even if it's not, I still have a relatively good, a relative sense of confidence that it's going to be caught. That Pickett, I think what that comes down to is, first of all, his receivers are making plays downfield, but he's not taking a lot of risks. He's not risking the ball. He's not putting the ball in jeopardy downfield. He's making throws downfield. He's attacking downfield. He's throwing the ball vertically and trying to attack in that way. He's being aggressive, but he's not taking a lot of risks. There aren't a lot of passes that you see thrown downfield and say, "Whew, got away with one on that." He put the ball up for grabs there. He isn't really doing that. When he's taking those shots downfield, he's got a legitimate opportunity at capitalizing, at getting it, at the pass being caught. And I feel the same way when he's throwing to Jordan Addison in the red zone. When Kenny Pickett's in the red zone, or even inside the 25 or so, and he drops back and throws, and the target is Jordan Addison, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a touchdown. And we've got there's an off week here. I'll probably go back and maybe I'll look through the stats at Pickett passing in the red zone this year. I got to think his passing, his completion percentage and his productivity, his passer rating when throwing to Jordan Addison in the red zone is pretty high. I think it's pretty good. It already was. Jordan Addison I was looking at Pro Football Focus entering this week, of all receivers in college football with at least 30 passing targets through 4 games, right? All receivers in college football, nobody had a higher passer rating than Jordan Addison. Like you have a higher passer rating throwing to Jordan Addison than anybody else in college football. I mean, he's just playing really well, and he's got a really good quarterback who's throwing to him. Homer Simpson says Kenny Pickett should be in the Heisman race, so the NCAA is rigged more than we already thought. Well, I mean, I don't know how rigged you thought it was before, but I mean, the reality is, if you want to be a Heisman, never mind a Heisman winner, but if you want to be in the conversation for the Heisman, if you want to be a legitimate candidate to be a finalist for the Heisman, you really have to be, I mean, I don't want to say you have to be, but it helps to be on one of those prominent teams. Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, USC, Texas. Being on one of those teams is going to get you into that conversation. It's going to go a long way in getting you into that conversation. It's not necessarily who you know, but it's what jersey you wear. And that, because it makes you more prominent. Like the classic example is Ndamukong Suh ends up as a Heisman finalist, right? Aaron Donald does not. What's the difference between Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh? You look at Aaron Donald's, senior season. You look at Suh's. I forget if he was a senior or a junior, but the year that he became a Heisman finalist, you compare those 2 seasons, and Donald had better stats. Donald had a better season. What's the difference? Aaron Donald played on a 6-7 Pitt team, or a 7-6 Pitt team. Excuse me. Suh played for Nebraska, more prominent college football program. He's a more notable, sort of more recognizable player. And he's a more prominent player. He's got that recognition. He's got that name recognition. And so he gets acknowledgement for what he's doing. If you're Kenny Pickett and you throw for 40 touchdowns playing for a Pitt team that goes 7-5 or 8-5 or something, or 8-4 or 9, maybe not 9-3, but 8-4 or something like that, it's going to be harder to get that recognition. If you are not playing for one of the top programs, one of the top name brands in college football, you are going to have to really excel, and your team is going to have to succeed. And you're going to have to do some things to get some national attention. So what can Kenny Pickett do? He's already got 19 touchdown passes and 1 interception through 5 games, right? That's pretty good. Seems like he should be getting attention. And I'm sure he'll get, Davey O'Brien or Manning Award or whatever, this or that, for quarterback of the week, or he'll get at least consideration for those, and he should. But to really get into the Heisman talk, here's the path for Kenny Pickett. I said this on Twitter, and I think I've actually said it before too. Beat Georgia Tech, got that. Beat Virginia Tech in 2 weeks, got that. Well, you got to do that. And then the week after that, come home, beat Clemson, and throw for anywhere from 3 to 5 touchdowns. Play a big game to beat Clemson. And don't screw up against Virginia Tech. So you beat Clemson and you're 6-1, and you throw 4 or 5 touchdowns against Clemson. By then, let's see, he's got 19 now. Let's say, if he could throw 3, even just 3 at Virginia Tech, at 22, you'd be up around 26, 27. Get over 25 touchdowns. Here's the bar, okay? Pitt is 6-1. If Pitt is 6-1 coming out of the Clemson game, and Kenny Pickett has more than 25 touchdown passes and throws at least at least, I mean, certainly 4, but I'll say even at least 3 touchdowns against Clemson and Pitt wins, Pickett will be legitimately in the Heisman conversation. But if you screw up against Virginia Tech, or if you don't have that big game against Clemson, I think it's going to be really hard. I mean, it's just, I don't think it's going to happen. You've got to do things to get yourself national attention. And when you've got an opportunity on the national stage, which playing Clemson is that, then you can do it. You can draw attention to yourself with a big game. And then, if he ends up, 25, 26, 27 touchdown passes coming out of that game, and Pitt is 6-1, and they're ranked, they beat Clemson, they're going to get themselves into the top 20, top 15 at that point. I mean, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, and we all know that because we sat after the Tennessee game talking about how there could be a perfect non-conference record, and we all know what happened the following week. So we know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but you talk about the roadmap, you talk about the path for Kenny Pickett to be in the Heisman conversation. That's the path. That's what he has to do. And that's what Pitt has to do, because it's not going to be good enough just for Pickett to put up 1 billion yards and 100 touchdowns. Pitt has to excel as well. If Pitt succeeds, it's going to be because of Pickett. And if Pickett continues succeeding, Pitt's going to have a really good chance to continue succeeding, and he'll get into that conversation. Let's see. Get some other competition here. Did I say competition? I want to get in some other comments. We got a lot of comments I haven't even gotten to yet. We're already coming up on the hour, but we'll keep rolling here. Let's see. Homer Simpson is calling an NC State Pitt matchup in the ACC championship. Josh Newark says this game was over when the Pitt defense caused 2 turnovers in the first 8 minutes. I think that was big. I don't know if the game was over at that point, but I think you have that, and then you get Pitt scoring 2 offensive touchdowns in the first quarter. You know what I mean? To where they can come out and they've got a 21-7 lead after the first quarter. I don't think it was over because they had to keep the pressure on offensively, and they had to keep scoring. So I don't think the game was over. But I mean, Pitt really. I felt like they were in control for most of the day. Scott Eisenberg says, what was Kenny Pickett's best throw of the day? I'm saying the broken play to crawl for the touchdown. That was a dart. Yeah, that was a great play. I mean, you take your pick of those two, right? Was it either the touchdown pass to crawl or the play before that? When Pickett scrambles, he's about to run, but he pulls up, doesn't cross the line of scrimmage, steps back, and gets Lucas Krull wide open. That was a heck of a play. He had a lot of, he just put the ball on the money. He put the ball on the money a lot today. Ted Reckes says, the best thing Kenny did was come back. He's so cool in the pocket. His long passes are on point. Yeah, I mean, obviously Kenny Pickett, I mean, you would say after 5 games, it looks like he made the right decision to return. He wasn't getting a lot of the feedback, the kind of feedback that he wanted from the NFL. And he came back to Pitt to work with Mark Whipple for another year, to be with Pat Narduzzi for another year, to work with these receivers for another year. Maybe Pickett had some idea of what was on tap. You know what I mean? Maybe he had an inclination that, hey, Jordan's really, really good. And Lucas Krull can be really, really good. There's some really good players with this veteran offensive line. I can have some success here. Although, we'll have to ask him about this on the Kenny Pickett show. I wonder if he anticipated having 19 touchdown passes through 5 games. Can't imagine that he did. Maybe he did, though. Maybe Kenny knew something we didn't. Let's see here. Scroll through the comments. See what else people have to say about this game. Will Z says, hey, Chris, solid stuff on the website as per usual. Just curious what you thought of the DBs today. AJ Woods seemed to be struggling a little. Yeah, AJ Woods, I don't think has been great all year. I think he's had some plays in just about every game that he probably wish he could have back. I think Marquez Williams has played well. Maybe he hasn't been tested, but maybe that's due to him covering really well. I think Damari Mathis has been okay. He had some ups and downs today. I think you go beyond those guys, you get to MJ Devonshire and AJ Woods, and I mean, they need to get better. I don't think Devonshire's been as good as they need him to be, and maybe not as good as we anticipated him being with some of the reports that were coming out of training camp. And I think AJ Woods definitely needs to improve, and you can put some of that on experience. These guys haven't been on the field that much, I guess, but they need to play. You know what I mean? They need to play better than they are, because they're going to need to rotate the defensive backs, and the corners, I think, they're going to get tested more and more. Right now, I think we've all been beating up on the safeties because the safeties haven't been great so far this year. And certainly in the Western Michigan game, and then in this game, I think there were some vulnerabilities exposed as well. There are definitely things to clean up over the next 2 weeks, and I think a lot of it is in the secondary. But again, I think some of it has to come from the pressure up front. The defensive line has to do a better job getting to the quarterback. The linebackers have to do a better job pressuring the quarterback. And those things just haven't been they haven't been consistent enough. They haven't been happening consistently enough. And I think that's allowing quarterbacks to go at Pitt's secondary more than they were able to last year, in most games other than Notre Dame and Clemson. Josh Newark says 5 games in, what does Kenny Pickett need to do to pass Alex Van Pelt? I got to look up the numbers, Josh. I don't have the numbers handy, so we'll see. We'll see. We'll find that out. We'll run everything down over the next few days for sure. We'll let you know where everything stands. Tito Panther says Wake Forest is 5-0 with Syracuse, Army, and Duke coming up. Are they going to be 8-0? Hey, I mean, Wake Forest is one of the surprises of the ACC so far, and yeah, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't keep it rolling. I mean, they're playing well. They beat Louisville today, 37-34. I didn't catch that game, obviously, because I was watching the Pitt game. But they're 5-0 overall, and they're 3-0 in the ACC. And you look at their schedule, yeah, they go to Syracuse next week, and they have an off week. Then they go to Army, and then they host Duke the day before Halloween, and then they finish out November with Carolina, NC State, Clemson, and Boston College. It looks like, so if they 1, 2, 3, I think they're playing. This has happened before. Are they playing North Carolina as a Wake Forest, I think, is playing North Carolina as a non-conference game, I'm guessing. I don't know if their crossover is. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Wake Forest is rolling, and their schedule is not daunting. Syracuse, Army, Duke, Carolina, NC State, Clemson, Boston College. So, I mean, NC State and Clemson back-to-back weeks. That's going to be tough. Boston College looks pretty good this year. So, they're going to finish the season with a tough stretch. But Syracuse, Army, Duke is a good opportunity to get to 8-0 before you run into the challenging part of your schedule of Carolina, NC State, Clemson, and Boston College. So, yeah. Hey, shout out to Wake Forest, man. They're rolling. Good for them, Kurt46 says Brandon Hill seemed to be on the wrong end of a lot of big plays as well. Yeah, it's all the safeties. And Hill ended up as the Pitt's leading tackler. He had 9 tackles. He had 1 tackle for loss. But, I mean, those safeties seem to be around the ball, which I'm not talking about running plays, which is a bad thing. You want the safeties to be around the ball on the running plays because then they make a lot of tackles. You saw Jordan Whitehead get a lot of tackles that way. Paris Ford got a lot of tackles that way. But they're around the ball a lot on passing plays, which is not ideal. Let's see here. William Richter says, great win today. Still some minor fundamental and technical problems, but overall great win. The line looked much better blocking the run. Kenny Pickett will give them a chance to win each game. Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. William. I think they do have some fundamental things they need to clean up on defense, particularly with tackling, and continue sort of modifying their scheme and their game plan against RPOs. But overall, yeah, pretty strong win. Let's see here. Ryan Wapanek? I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, Ryan. Ryan W. says, are they going to burn Rodney Hammond's red shirt? If so, I'd like to see him in more than just garbage time. I believe, let me just double check to make sure here. Rodney Hammond, I'm going to bring up his stat line. So he played He played in 3 of the first 4 games. So I think he was, because he played against UMass. He was on the field for a couple snaps against Western Michigan, and then he played against New Hampshire. So this was his 4th game. You're allowed to play 4 games before you burn a red shirt. He's part of their offense. Right now, Rodney Hammond is one of their top 3 running backs. He's one of their best players, one of their best running backs. He's going to be on the field. Yeah, he's not going to red shirt. He's going to play. And running back is one of those positions where it's fine. You know what I mean? I think you recruit a lot of guys. Guys are ready to play as freshmen. It's one of the positions where freshmen seem to be able to come in and have success immediately, probably more than any other spot on the field. And look, he can help you win games. You know what I mean? I think he can help you win, a lot and get your running game going. And yeah, they used him in garbage time there today, but it's not like any of the running backs got a whole lot of run prior to that final drive. They had what? Let me look at the stats. I know there were 10 carries, 10 running plays on the final drive. Abanikanda, Davis, and Hammond finished with 34 carries. So almost a third of their rushing attempts came on the final drive of the game. So it's not like the running backs were getting a lot of work anyway. I would like to see Hammond out there more often too. I would like to see Abanikanda out there more often too. If they play another odd man front, if they play another 3-3-5 defense, then they should run the ball more. Because they think they could. I think they could have had more success, running the ball today than they did, and it was just mostly because they didn't try it all that much. But again, it's hard to argue with the results, right? David Allen says, "Why not put in the backup offensive line for that last series?" It's a great question. We were talking about Owen Drexel getting hurt on the next to last play when they really should have just knelt down. I mean, it's still 8 minutes to go. You're ahead by 30. You should feel pretty comfortable. I understand keeping your starting O-line, though, to try and run things down. But once you got another, I have to check the exact timing on some of these things. But, I mean, they picked up 4 first downs on that drive. At some point, you converted enough first downs that you knew you had the game locked up and you didn't need to keep your starting offensive line in there anymore. So I kind of agree. Maybe you could have put the backups in, but you didn't want to give the ball back. You wanted to eat up the clock. And you know what? Maybe you created a little bit of momentum for your offensive line with blocking for the run and establishing the run, which you were able to do when Georgia Tech knew you weren't going to do anything other than run the ball. You know what I mean? They knew you were going to run the ball. It was the only thing you were going to do in that situation. They threw 1 pass on 11 plays, and you were able to go out and do it. So maybe they build a little confidence, but hopefully they don't lose Owen Drexel for any amount of time. Let's see here. Tyler Buchanan says, "This is why we don't get too high or too low. People wanted heads 2 weeks ago." And he follows up and says, "I like this team and have been bullish on them all year. I think this is the best Pitt team since my freshman year at Pitt when Pitt had Larry Fitzgerald." You're going to make me think about this, Tyler. I'm going to probably say 2009. I'm going to say 2009 is still the best team. I mean, 2009 ended up, as an all-around team was a better team than the 2003 team or 2002, one of those. Offense and defense, they were really good on both sides of the ball. They had an efficient quarterback. They had a really good receiver, a really good tight end, a really good running back. They had dominant defensive ends. They had linebackers who played pretty well. They had a strong secondary. 2009 was a really good team, and it helps that they won 10 games. 2008 might have been an even better team. Although I think, 2009, Dion Lewis was not an upgrade over LaShawn McCoy, but Jonathan Baldwin in 2009 was much better than Jonathan Baldwin in 2008. Doran Dickerson actually getting the ball thrown to him in 2009 was better than in 2008. And the defense might have been a little bit better in 08 than it was in 09. Still really good. Anyway, Homer Simpson says you should name this podcast Overreaction Saturday because win or lose, we're going to overreact. You are right about that, buddy. We sure are. That's what we're here to do. I mean, what's the point of having a post-game show if you're not going to overreact to most of what you saw, right? That's the fun of it. Let's see here. Joe New, continuing his streak of hits here, says, "I care much more about being ranked than winning the Coastal." That's silly, and particularly if you do one, you're going to end up with the other. Royce Beacom says, "Will the running game be able to provide enough production to divert defenses from the passing attack, particularly when up against the stronger defenses of the schedule?" I don't know. You know what I mean? It's going to depend. I don't think they're going to be able to rely on the running game week to week. You know what I mean? If a team is able to shut down their passing game, they're going to be in trouble. Unless they can get a big step up performance from their own defense. I don't think, other than a game like today, I think they could have today. I think they could have today because of the way Georgia Tech was playing defense. I don't think that's going to be there for them all season. I don't think they're going to have too many games that they can rely on the run. But I think they can be better than they've been. And I think they can take some of the things that maybe they saw or did today and hope to be able to apply them. I think they've got talented backs. They just need to block. They need to block better, and certainly I think they look better when they run to the left. Either between the left tackle and left guard, or when they run off tackle. I think they run better, but they've got to. We'll see. We'll see what they're able to do consistently. RJC Man 38 is one of our super chatters. We appreciate him. Says defense produced huge today. Yeah, they had some stop. They had some big moments. Like I said, they were able to sort of turn away Georgia Tech's momentum. You know what I mean? Georgia Tech scores a touchdown in the first quarter. The next 3 drives, they go 3 and out. They score a touchdown in the second quarter. They get stopped on 4th down on their next 2 drives. They score a touchdown in the third quarter. They go 3 and out on the next drive. The defense was able to respond, and I think they got some help from Georgia Tech in the play calls and the way Georgia Tech wanted to attack with their offense. But overall, there are questions. You know what I mean? I think it's there are definitely things they need to clean up. There are definitely things they need to clean up. And that leads into Robert Mitten's question. He says, what is your honest opinion on Pitt winning the Coastal in the ACC this year? I think they should have, they've got a very real chance of winning the Coastal. You know what I mean? I don't, again, I know on TV they were talking about Pitt is the Coastal favorite right now. I don't know about that. I'm not going to bet money on that. But I know that they just played their first conference game. They went on the road against a team that just beat the team that was predicted to win the Coastal. Right, so you got the transitive thing happening there, and they hung. They beat them by 31. They scored 52 points on a conference opponent on the road. They've never done that under Pat Narduzzi. I don't think they've done it since joining the ACC. I'm pretty sure Paul Chryst never scored 50 points on anybody on the road. I have to go back and look at the record books. Wait, I have the record books right here. Let me see. Paul Chryst, 2014. Did you score 51 points in a game? Yes, against Delaware. Did you do it against a conference opponent on the road? No. You scored 48 in double overtime against Duke at home, and you lost. 2013. Did you score 50 points against a conference opponent on the road? No. Did you score 50 points at all? Oh, wait. Yes. At Duke. They had the 58-55 game. Doggone it. All right. So this is the second time Pitt has scored 50 points on the road against an ACC opponent since joining the conference in 2013. Forgot about that Duke game. 58-55. I thought I had something there. All right. Let's see. Matt Durney, super chatter. We appreciate you today. Says, most encouraging thing I saw today was Pitt was still trying to score up 28 with the ball in their own zone with 1 minute left. Don't let a team off the hook when they can't stop you. If not for Shockey's penalty, we score before the half. So here's an interesting thing, okay? They did keep their foot on the gas. But, when I talked about the third quarter and the fourth quarter, when I talked about the second half, I said, well, they only had 4 possessions, right? And they scored a touchdown on their first possession, and they took almost 5 minutes off the clock doing it. They went 3 and out on the next possession. They kicked a field goal on the next one and took almost 5 minutes off. Now, situation's always going to be unique when you're up 30, right? You're up 4 touchdowns. It's always going to be a unique situation, and it's going to change how you approach each drive. They were obviously trying to milk clock. I don't know if that counts as going conservative because they were still throwing the ball and they still moved the ball down the field. I think they definitely tried to lock it up and run the ball on the final drive of the game and eat up as much of the 8 minutes as they could, and they ended up eating up all of it. But I don't think they took their foot off the gas, but they definitely wanted to eat up more time. Now, it didn't go wrong for them, but that was clearly the goal, and they were successful in doing it, which is why I think when we look at it, they only scored 10 points in the second half, but they were able to, accomplish their goals, which I think made for a pretty effective half. Alex Fernandez says, didn't get a chance to watch the game, but the box score made it look like a solid W. Looks like Hammond did a good job with the carries he was allotted. Look, it was a very solid W. I mean, Pitt was in control of this game from the start. They never trailed. They took the very first lead, and they were, ahead. They were never... Let's see here. They scored first on, they get an interception and score a touchdown. Patrician gets an interception and runs it back. They go up 14-0. They were never, and then Georgia Tech scored and made it 14-7. After that, Pitt scored again, made it 21-7, and they were never, the lead was never less than a touchdown or never less than 2 touchdowns after that. So, I mean, you're in control. If you take a 2-touchdown lead in the first quarter and you never are closer than 2 touchdowns the rest of the way, you're in control. You know what I mean? They controlled the game. Even though, and I got a text from a buddy at one point in the third quarter, why am I still nervous? It's because you're Pitt fans. You know what I mean? You're conditioned to kind of feel this way. And I understand that. But even though you were always sort of worried that Georgia Tech was somehow going to get the momentum and take over the game or something like that, or come back, and it would be a brutal, awful loss, the reality is Pitt was in control. When Pitt wanted to score a touchdown, they pretty much did, almost every time. I mean, you look at their drives in the first half, they went, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, and then they went touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. And pretty much put the game away at that point. And then you have the second half where they go touchdown, punt, field goal, run out the clock. And so they were pretty much in control. When they wanted to score a touchdown to keep themselves, separated from Georgia Tech, they were able to do so. This was Pitt's game. I don't think it was just a solid win, Alex. I would say they controlled this game. Tyler Buchanan wants to argue about who was better, 2003 or 2009. We'll have to have that conversation another time, Tyler, because we're already closing in on the 80-minute mark here for this post-game show. But I appreciate we can have that discussion about the 2003 roster, the 2009 roster. But it's a fun conversation to have. It says 2003 team was 5-2 in a Big East. They lost to. Oh yeah, they only lost to Miami and West Virginia. So you're right about that. They also lost to Notre Dame, but that wasn't a conference game. All right, Pitt 52, Georgia Tech 21. I think we can call it there and go enjoy the rest of our Saturdays. I've got plenty of work to do here to wrap this thing up. Stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com. Of course, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, there's message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. I know the message boards are going to be lively tonight. They were lively all afternoon. That's going to continue to be the case. In between posting on the message boards, go check out homefieldapparel.com. I've got the Warm Up the Victory Light shirt on. You can get this one and plenty of other awesome Pitt designs on a really high-quality t-shirt, high-quality sweatshirt. Whatever your fancy is there, and you can get it at a discount. Use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R. When you go to homefieldapparel.com, you get 15% off. Listen, if you are on the live stream right now, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's right. I think I'm pointing at it. Let me see if I'm pointing at the subscribe button. Yeah, it's right down there, right? You see it? Click subscribe. That way you never miss a live stream. We go live after every game. Talk about the game. We have coverage. We can have these conversations. We go live every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. for the Panther-Lair show. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will not miss a live stream. A lot of people are clicking the like button. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Click the subscribe button as well. Get notifications so you know when we start a brand new live stream. Pitt's off next week, but we'll still have a Panther-Lair show on Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So tune in for that. We'll have a conversation then. Thanks, everybody, for joining the live stream today, our post-game show. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate the super chatters, as always. Appreciate everybody who listens to the podcast throughout the week. Have a great rest of the weekend, people. Pitt is 4-1. They're 1-0 in the ACC. They just beat it. Let's say it again. How many times did I say it today? They just beat a conference opponent on the road by 31 points. Can't argue about that. People will find a way, but it's hard. It's hard to argue about that. Thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of the weekend. We'll talk to you Wednesday night.